Hello, guys. You're welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Nancy, and if this is your first time coming across my channel, please subscribe and also turn on your notification bell so you'll be the first to be notified when I upload new tutorials. So, in today's class, we're going to be learning how to make this trendy baggy trouser. So, if this is something you're interested in learning, keep on watching and let's get started. The name of the fabric I used is called an African print fabric, and I made use of 3 yards. So guys, we'll be working on the front piece of the trouser. I've gone ahead to fold my fabric into two. Now to know the wideness of the fold you need, you are going to place the tape measure from the center fold of this fabric to measure your hip measurement divided by 4, and then you would add extra 8 inches to that. After this, I'll go ahead to roll a starting line, and this starting line is also referred to as the waistline. So now, because I'll be attaching a waistband to the waist of this pant, I'm going to be subtracting the waistband now. I want the width of my waistband to be 2 inches. So for this reason, I'm going to be subtracting 1.5 inch. I would place this 1.5 inch on this line here to subtract it. So by the time I attach my waistband to the waist of this pant, it becomes 2 inches. The next line is the hip line, which is 9 inches. I marked it here. Now, after the hip line, the next line is the crotch line. So my crotch is 11 inches, but because it's a baggy, so basically, whatever you have as your crotch depth measurement, just add extra 1 inch to that, like I've done for mine. So go ahead to draw straight lines across the hip line and the crotch depth line as well. So the reason I added 1 inch to the crotch depth line is because I do not want the crotch to be tight. Now, once you are done with that, you're going to place your tape from the crotch depth line to mark 4 inches, and this new point you marked is going to be for your tie line. Now I went ahead to draw a straight line across this point, and this is my tie line. Take note of this. So still subtracting your waistband at the waistline here, place your tape like you've done earlier to mark your desired pants length. So my trouser length is 43 inches, so I'm going to go ahead to add extra folding allowance of 2 inches, and that will be 45 inches altogether. Now I'll go ahead to draw straight lines across all these points I marked. So this is for my desired trouser length, and this is the extra 2 inches folding allowance. So just a quick recap: this is the waistline, the hip line, the crotch line, and the thigh line. So now I'm going to place my tape measure on the hip line to mark my hip measurement divided by 4, and then I'm going to add extra 5 inches allowance because it's a baggy pants. If you don't want your baggy to be too big, you can just add 4 inches instead of 5. Now I'm going to draw a straight line across this new point I marked to meet the waistline and the crotch line, just like you see me doing. Now to get the crotch extension, you are going to divide your hip measurement into 4, and whatever you get, you divide it into 4 again. And then for me, I got 2.3 inches. I'm going to place my tape after the straight line on the crotch line here to mark 2.3. I would connect this new point into the straight line with my curved ruler. Make sure that the curve isn't too deep so it won't gather fabric after it has been sewn and worn. So just make sure that your curve isn't too deep around the crotch curve area. So to know the measurement you'll be placing on the tie line, you take the measurement you have here from the center fold of the crotch here to the crotch extension. This is 16.5 inches. Now you subtract 1 inch from that, and that will be 15.5. Then you mark it on your tie line to connect these new points together. So since we already marked 15.5 inches on the tie line, I'm going to be placing this 15.5 inches on the leg opening, that's on the hem here, because it's a straight pant, and then I would connect this new point to meet the measurement on the tie line. So guys, this is basically how to go about the front piece of your baggy pants. Remember I said that if you don't want your baggy to be very big, you can just reduce the extra allowance by 1 inch. Since I used 5 inches, you should use 4 inches. All right guys, I'm going to go ahead to cut out the front piece just like you see me doing. Pay attention to the area I'm cutting so you don't make any mistake. So now let's focus on the back piece. For the back piece, I've already folded my fabric into two, and I also made sure that it's a little bit wider than the fabric I used for the front. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to place the front piece directly on this back piece that I folded. So make sure that the straight side of this front piece is directly placed on the folded part of the back piece, just like you see me doing. So now the next thing you should have in mind is that the waist of the back piece is usually longer than the waist of the front piece. So for this reason, I'm going to be adding extra 1.5 inch to the top of the waistline on this side. Please pay attention to it. To connect this new point to meet the top of the waistline on this side, so I'm going to be using my ruler to form a slant line by connecting the waistline on this side to meet this new point at the top of the waistline. So now I'm going to be adding 2 inches stitching allowance to the waist on the side and to the hip as well. Now for the crotch, I'll be adding just 2.5 inches. For a plus size person, you should add 3 inches. Alright, after I've done this, I'll go ahead to connect all these points together to form the crotch curve for the back piece. So pay attention to how I placed my ruler by connecting these points together. Now on the sides here, I'll continue marking 2 inches all the way down to the end of the trouser, after which I'll connect all the points together. Once you are done with this, then this is basically how to go about the back piece of the trouser. So I'm going to use my scissors to cut the back piece out. So once you're done with that, the next step is to mark the points you want your pockets to be attached. So from the waist here, I'm going to mark 1 inch below the waistline. And on this point I marked, I'm going to notch it so I can easily identify the point. So this is where our pocket is going to be attached. Once you have done that, you head over to your sewing machine to stitch the crotch of the front piece by 1 inch, and you should also stitch the crotch of the back piece by 1 inch following the direction of the chalk. After stitching the crotch for the front piece, this is how it should be. And after stitching the crotch for the back piece, this is how it should be as well. So let's go ahead to cut out the pockets. I folded the fabric into two, and I further folded this fabric into two again. So I practically folded this fabric into four so that after cutting it gives us four pockets. Now on this opening here, I'm going to place my tape to mark a width of 7 inches, and then I would act like I'm inserting my hand into the pocket. I'll spread out my fingers to be able to carve out the shape of the pockets. So I feel like this is the easiest way to go about it. Now I'll go ahead to cut out the pocket following the direction of the chalk. So once you have done this, the next step is to attach the pocket to the sides of the pants. Remember that we notched the point that the pocket should be attached to. So that's very easy to do. So this is my front piece here. I'm going to spread it out this way, and then I'll go ahead to pick two pockets to place one on this side. That's the point I notched, and I'll place the second pocket on the other side. I'll head over to my sewing machine to stitch the pocket to the side of the front piece by 1/2 inch following the direction of my finger. And I would also place the second pocket here to do the same thing. Now for the back piece, I'm also going to spread out the back piece this way to place each pocket by the sides, just like I did for the front. So now I've gone ahead to stitch the pockets by the sides of the back piece, and I've also done the same thing on the front piece as well. So now I'm going to place the right side of my front piece directly on the right side of the back piece. Here you would notice that the back piece is wider than the front piece, which is normal. So I'm just going to go ahead to align the sides together first, then pin them together. Once I'm done pinning this entire side, I'm also going to be pinning the other sides together by aligning them together. And this is because the front piece is smaller than the back piece. Now I'll head over to my sewing machine to stitch the sides following the direction of my chalk by 1 inch. I'll do the same thing on this side. Like I said, it isn't going to be equal. You have to align the sides together, and then you stitch the sides by 1 inch following the direction of the chalk. After stitching the sides together, this is how the trouser should be. The next thing you're going to do is to align the crotch line together. Make sure that the lines are aligned at the bottom here, and then use a pin to hold it together. So just continue pinning the side and you stitch the sides by 1 inch following the direction of the chalk. After stitching, this is how it should be. The next thing we are going to do is to turn the pants to the right side of the fabric. So obviously you can see that the side pocket has been fixed properly. Now the next step is to measure the waist. So I'm going to place my tape from the center line of the front piece here to take the waist measurements. And then when I get to the center line again, I'll stop taking the measurement. This is 56 inches altogether. So this simply means that the length of the waistband we need should be 56 inches as well. Now I've gone ahead to cut out the waistband and the width of the waistband is 5 inches. Take note of that. So one of the waistband would not be long enough. So what I did was to cut out another waistband and then place the right side of each fabric directly on each other. Now I'm going to place my tape from one end to measure the length I want. So please pay attention here. So since the waist measurement on the pants was 56 inches and this waistband is into two, I'll divide that 56 inches into two and that will give me 28 inches. But instead of marking on 28 inches, I added extra 1 inch to mark 29 inches so that by the time I stitch the sides together, it becomes 28 inches. But all together, after taking the measurement for the waist, it will become 56 inches. I hope this was explanatory. If you don't understand it, please just rewatch this clip and listen to me carefully. Now on one end, I'm going to head over to my sewing machine to stitch the sides together by half of an inch. So after stitching one end, the next step is to stitch the other end. But this time around, we need to consider that we are going to be inserting an elastic band and a long strap. So to do this properly, I'm going to place my tape from the top here to mark 1 inch below the starting of the fabric. And then I would head over to my sewing machine to stitch following the direction of just this white chalk. After that, I'll create a spacing of 1 inch. From this new point I marked, I'm going to stitch all the way down to the end. So make sure you are stitching on just the white line and you are creating a hole, like a spacing. So once you are done stitching, this is how it should be. You should spread it out this way and then from here you'd notice that a hole was created on this side. So this hole is where the elastic band and the strap would be inserted into, but as time goes on you understand. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to fold the stitching allowances here to stitch the sides very close to the edges. After stitching, this is how it should be. You can see the stitching on the sides, that's the edges of the sewing allowance inside, and this is how the front piece should look, very neat. So this is basically how to go about it. It's very easy. Just pay attention to everything that you are told to do. Now the next step is to fold the waistband into two equally. After folding the waistband, you should give it a quick press. So once you are done with that, let's go ahead to identify where the hole is. So you can see that this is where the hole is. Now on this part where your hole is, you know it has a line like a joining there. You are going to be placing it directly on the center line of the front piece of your pants. On this part where the hole is, you are going to be placing it on the center joining of the front piece. You can see that I turned it to this other side to place it this way. Now I'm going to go ahead to pin the waistband all around the waist of this pant. So guys, now I'm going to head over to the sewing machine to stitch the waistband all around the waist of the pants by half of an inch. After stitching the band, you can overlock the edges so that it will be very neat. So I believe that this is the easiest way to go about making this kind of waistband for beginners. So this is the elastic band and the width of the elastic band I would be using is 1.5 inch. Why for the width of the band I would be using my waist measurement minus 1 inch. So my waist measurement is 29 inches. I subtracted 1 inch which made it 28 inches. Now I'm going to go ahead to cut it at this point. So the reason I use 28 inches is because this elastic band doesn't stretch that much compared to the smaller ones. Once you have done that, you go ahead to cut out the part you need. Now you're going to use a safety pin to insert this elastic into the hole that was created in the center front, just like you see me doing. So once you've brought out the other end of the elastic band, you're going to head over to the sewing machine to stitch both ends together by half of an inch, following the direction of my finger. So after stitching the elastic band, I went ahead to stretch out the waist so that the elastic band goes into the hole properly. The next step is to stitch directly on the waistband, but before inserting the rope into this hole, the first thing you're going to do is to make your first stitch, which will be half of an inch away from the top of the waist. So make sure you are stretching out the waistband while stitching. So after making the first stitch, the next step is to make the second stitch, which would be half of an inch away from this joining, that's the waist joining. I'm going to be stitching half of an inch away all through the waistband. So guys, after stitching, this is how the waistband should be. Now the next step is to insert the rope into this hole, the same hole you used in inserting the elastic. So we are going to be inserting it into this hole. So guys, you can see that it's very easy to make this waistband. The final step is to fold the hem of the pants. So guys, I've gone ahead to stitch the hem of the pants, and this is the final outcome. You can see it's actually very easy to make, and I hope this tutorial was helpful. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe and also turn on the notification bell. Thank you for watching, and see you in my next one.